Hi everyone. This evening we're starting our first video blog, which is something that I haven't really done before, and I think we're going to have a little bit of fun. So we're going to talk about a different topic every month or so, and this topic this month is going to be about memorizing in music. I believe that there are a lot of people who would benefit from the concept of why we should memorize music, how to memorize music, and how it applies to performance in general. So let's talk first about the why. Why should we memorize music? I mean, after all, when we play music, there's notes on the page. Certainly as classical musicians, this is something that we're very attuned to, no pun intended. We have the music on the page to tell us what to do. It's basically our script. Now, a real musician who can be authentic goes beyond the script. A musician who transcends what is on the page is what ultimately is going to move us. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that when the music is performed in such a way that you feel that this music belongs to the performer, and of course the composer as well, you feel that this performer is sharing something on the inside that is being imparted to us in the audience. So this is the main reason why we should memorize music. When we memorize, we are not just doing something that someone else said to do, we are actually engaging actively, proactively with what the composer has asked us to do, and by definition we're putting our own stamp on it. Many people would argue that we should only do what the composer says because there's a certain movement in classical music to play as purely as possible and not to, God forbid, go against the wishes of the composer. And this is a big subject for another time, but by definition, when you play something on your own because of your unique body type, how your fingers are formed, if they're long fingers, short fingers, how your body is in terms of the breadth of your shoulders, even your height makes a difference in how the music comes out. And when you memorize, you are free to basically express the phrasing the way that you believe is what the composer intended in the given style. So let's talk now about what it is exactly that is a challenge for many students to memorizing music. Many students have this impression that if I just play something enough, it's going to just magically come into my head. And actually, it doesn't work that way. What I've learned, particularly as a string player, and I think this is very important for strings, is that if you have a very strong foundation of how to play with ease and efficiency, then your body will naturally memorize what you're trying to learn. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that there are different types of memory, but for me anyway, personally, when I memorize a piece, it's less about what's happening here than what's happening here. And I know that my screensaver or my background is preventing you from really seeing my hands. But what I'm trying to say is that when my body learns something, it actually has a much stronger connection to the music, and it's a little bit like an airplane on autopilot. When an airplane is on autopilot, the plane knows what to do because the computer has this preset language that is telling the airplane the course is clear. It's going to a certain place. And when we practice, we're actually aiming for that kind of mindset. It's not to say that we want to be like robots when we play, and it's certainly not to say that when we perform we want to be on autopilot where our minds go out the window. It's actually the opposite. Our bodies know the piece so well that our mind is free to actually be in control on a very granular, finite level about what the body can do to bring out the maximum expression from the soul on the inside. I'm very metaphysical when it comes to music. So what I'm getting at with all of this is that if you really want to memorize well, I don't care if you're learning Twinkle for the first time or you're learning something more complicated like the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto, it's really important that you have all of your ducks in a row in terms of what technique am I using to make the music flow as easily as possible. Am I playing this with ease and efficiency in such a way that I'm using the right fingerings, the right bowings if you're a string player? Am I playing in such a way that I'm not working against myself? I'm not fighting my own body, because this is a very important thing that many teachers even overlook. We alluded to, or I alluded to, the fact that our bodies are all different. And sometimes as you get older and more experienced, as a kid, you find out that what works for your teacher and the fingerings that might be in the music might not work for you specifically. By and large, we are very similar as human beings, but there are differences that can make or break what's considered a difficult spot that, one might think it's a memory slip, but actually it's a technical slip. So what I'm getting at with all of this is the fact that when we memorize, you have to be able to have that ease and efficiency set up so that way there's no technical hurdle to what's going on. Now let's talk about the mental aspect of memory, because there is a mental aspect as well. I can't deny that. When you practice, when one practices, there is always the way I see it is one is building a puzzle little piece by piece. So, if you're learning something really complicated, like let's say, you were learning the Brahms Violin Concerto, or something that takes a lot of time to play even, you're not going to be able to learn, let's take any piece that's 30 minutes long. You're not going to learn all 30 minutes within a week, or even, sometimes a month. It might take 2 months. It depends on your level, what you're playing. But what I'm getting at is the fact that as you play and you learn a piece of music, you start part by part. And what actually is happening is when you go follow the principles of playing with ease and efficiency, you figured out how to play, let's say, 6 measures. It's one phrase, maybe an 8-bar phrase. And those 8 bars are being played in such a way that your body just says, aha, I can do this because I figured out how to make my body do this. And I also have the dexterity, the muscle memory in my fingers. All of this comes with experience and time and a good teacher. But once you can do that, your mind will actually put together what you're doing as a unit. In other words, you will find this ability to put together the large puzzle with many different pieces. As an example, I used to have dreams about music when I was in conservatory. I was practicing for 5 hours a day, and in the middle of the night, my brain was like all arranging everything, figuring everything out. And I couldn't necessarily tell you what dreams were about, but it's said that when we sleep, our mind is making sense of the world that has transpired in the past, 24 hours, 12 hours, whatever, anything. And what I'm getting at is that if you know, as a musician who is figuring out how to practice, if you know just how much to practice, what your body and mind are capable of doing in such a way that you've given yourself smart, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-honored goals, that is the SMART technique, S-M-A-R-T. Say it again, smart, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-honored. You will be able to know exactly how much to practice and what is actually feasible to memorize. The next day, after you have put in all of your time into working on, let's say, 8 bars, could be 32 bars, whatever, you'll be able to add a little bit more and reinforce what you did the day before. And so it goes on and on and on. You take little parts, add more parts and more parts and more parts. And there's even a very fine process where you'll figure out that sometimes it's very applicable to work on maybe a part in the middle of a piece of music that might be exceptionally difficult, but you memorize that very difficult part. Then you might want to take a little part before that, a little part after that, put it all together. And this takes sometimes a few days, sometimes it takes a few hours, one day, a few minutes. It depends on the complexity of the piece. So what I've given you is more of a conceptual framework as to how we memorize. I know that what I'm saying is very maybe out there for a lot of you. It's very advanced, but I hope you'll take these tips in a way that you can apply them to whatever it is that you're learning. I will certainly admit the fact that this blog has been, or vlog we should call it, has been more for advanced students. But let's say you are a parent of a child who is preparing for a recital. Let's say you've got a 6-year-old and she or he is learning Yankee Doodle. Well, the odds are, because we're dealing with a simple piece of music, it's probably not going to be so complicated in terms of figuring out where the trouble spots are. We don't usually have to talk about changing fingerings or bowings if you're a string player for kids who are just starting out. There could be technical issues that are impeding the memorization that the body does because of maybe a body type that's not working with a particular setup. So it is feasible that someone's arms, for instance, might be too long for a certain bow length that someone's been working with, and maybe a bow hold adjustment needs to be done if the bow is the correct size. These are all things that a skilled teacher is going to know. But I guess the takeaway from all of this is that if you're having memory issues and you've been repeating your song or your piece or your passage over and over again, fear not. It's not a problem with your mind, most likely. It is 99.9% of the time a technical problem. And then you should go to your teacher for help and say, I really just am having trouble with this place. Please make it easier. So I hope this has been helpful. Daniel Broniatowski from the Maestro Musicians Academy. Have a great evening, everyone.